Hello guys, it feels like it has been a while since I've been here. I took off last week and didn't film anything because I'm in college right now and this is finals week. So today actually I'm submitting my last assignment for the semester and I can't wait to have more time to be more present on Instagram and be able to film more videos. I'm looking forward to that, but I definitely missed y'all last week and missed talking about books. If you are new to this channel, welcome here. It is so wonderful to see all these people coming to learn about books and talk about books. I have so enjoyed reading your comments and getting suggestions from y'all, and I've been reading some of your suggestions, and it's so fun to have this community. So thank you for coming here and for subscribing. I know a lot of you found me through the Christian fiction video that I did, so thank you for finding that video and hitting that subscribe button. If you are not already subscribed, please go ahead and hit that below and even turn on your notifications. Usually I do post Fridays at 3, but you can be notified and not miss any videos, and that really does help my channel and helps to get more views and more subscribers when you hit the subscribe button. So thank you for that. Alright, so today we are doing our April recap. So it is already like May 10th, I think, right now. It's May 11th. It's already May 11th, and I have not done the April recap video. So I'm really looking forward to this and talking about some of the books that I read last month. A lot of these actually were really good books. So I came into this video thinking that I had not read very much last month, but then I looked at my March video and I actually did read more pages this month, and I had quite a few like 5-star books, so I'm really excited to jump into this. So just a couple of stats. I read 7 books this month, and last month just a few stats. So this month I read 7 books, and last month to compare. Just a few stats to start off. So last month I read 7 months, and then if you compare... Just a few stats to start out. So last month I read 7 books, and if you compare that to the previous month where I read 8 books, I did read 1 fewer books, but I did read about 200 more pages, I believe. I read 2,407 pages in the month of April. 3 of those were audiobooks, and 1 was a read aloud. So 3 of them were print books that I was reading on my own time, but mostly I was listening to a lot of books, listening to a couple of long books, so that was really enjoyable. Let's start off with The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Okay, so this was an audiobook that I listened to, and I actually started it back in March. I don't remember exactly how long it took me to read it, but it was a longer book. I did really enjoy listening to it, and it was definitely captivating. Like, you wanted to keep listening. I gave it 4 stars. So I really liked the way that it was written. It was kind of like a mystery style. You have different sections for each person, like giving their testimony, and you don't actually really know what case is being solved until the end. You just have like all the evidence leading up to it, and you have to make your own guesses on what is going on here. So it was definitely really well written, and I really liked that. But overall, it was kind of almost disturbing, not in like violent way disturbing, but more in like a creepy, don't really know what's going on kind of disturbing. So I didn't necessarily like that. And what's interesting is the author, Wilkie Collins, he didn't really like marriage. And you can kind of see that portrayed throughout the book. There's not really any great marriages in the end. Some people do end up getting married, but it's almost like a romanticized, like, I knew this would be the best marriage ever kind of thing. So I didn't like that feeling in the book that he was constantly kind of downplaying marriage. One thing though, the audiobook is so fabulous. So if you are going to read this book, which I would still recommend it just was my favorite, I would recommend listening to the audiobook because the narrator was so good at doing like the different accents, and then the narrator changes for each section of the story where there's a different person giving their testimony. So I really like that. And then my favorite characters would be Pesco was really great, and then Fosco on the flip side was really terrible and really just disturbing. So yeah, it was a fun book to read, and of course I always like the classics, and there's usually something good that you can say about the classics. Then the next book that I read was Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. So this was actually our family read aloud, and I mentioned this in my what am I currently reading book, and I'll link it up here. But this book is a World War II historical fiction, and it is YA fiction. Lois Lowry writes YA fiction, so it says 10 and up on the back, but it is about Copenhagen in 1943, so when the Nazis come in, and it's kind of about helping some Jews to escape on a boat. It's really great, just intro to World War II and what was happening during that time, and what would it be like for, I think they're like 10 or 12. So what would it be like for a 10-year-old to be living during World War II, and kind of open your child's eyes to that. This is my second read through, I think. I read it when I was in school, and then my dad just read it out loud to all of us. So I gave this 4 stars, and I would definitely recommend it, especially to any of you who are homeschooling and giving your children books to read or read alouds. It's a short book. It's only 137 pages, so I think you would really enjoy that. The next book that I finished in April is It's Not That Complicated by Anna Sophia Botkin. This is actually the second time that I have read this book. It is by 2 sisters, and it is about how, well, the subtitle is How to Relate to Guys in a Healthy, Sane, and Biblical Way. So this is the second time I read it. I actually did a buddy read with one of my friends, and it was really fun to go through this as a book study and talk about it. There's really great chapters in here. There's chapters on just how you should be a believer and encouraging other believers, and in that sense, it should be equal for guys and girls. You should be encouraging them and being a Christ-like example and making them feel welcome to both of them. And also it has a chapter on feminism, which is super good, and how feminism was made to destroy the family and to bring down men. And then it has like a section on how to be a good sister and helping your brothers to be the strong men that we expect them to be and not talking down to them. I really enjoyed that. And yeah, just how to be content, how to grow in your godliness, how to just talk to a guy. That's why you have parents, how to control your heart, basically, and all these different topics. I really enjoyed this, and I would recommend it to probably any teenage girl, just because it's so important to understand that our actions always mean something, and to understand that it's not always bad to be interacting with a guy, even though it's hard. This gives some good just guidelines and basically getting to the heart of it. You know, what is your heart between every interaction that you're having with anyone, and do you really understand as a Christian what we are called to do? So I really like this book, and I know that the authors aren't entirely like biblically sound, but they don't really have any ministry now, so there's not much you can find about them. And in this book, there was not any bad theology that I could see, and I've read it twice. I really like it. And then the next book is The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepidis, and this was a audiobook that I listened to. And I don't know whether I'd recommend you listen to it or read it, because the audiobook was so amazing. It takes place in Spain post World War II. Franco is still in charge of Spain, and there's kind of some shady stuff going on with orphanages. I don't want to spoil too much, but it was so interesting, and I loved the historical aspect of it because it was something I never knew about before, so I got to learn about it. And then the author has and this is where it would be really cool to read it in print, but the author has real documents, like from real life, of people testifying what it was like in Spain during this time. People from America going on, people in Spain. It was really interesting to read and learn about this stuff, and I love that it was completely historically based. And it's about a boy who's 18, and he comes from Texas, so even more of a connecting point for me because I'm from Texas. And he goes over to Spain, and he's staying in Madrid, and his eyes are kind of open to this world under the surface. When coming out of World War II, you know, Spain wanted everyone to think that they were doing really well, and so they kind of had this veneer over the top of for all the Americans that were coming in. They thought, wow, this is really great, these huge hotels, but then you dig a little deeper and you see, you know, the poor side of town and what's actually happening to the people. So that was really enjoyable. I loved the characters. It was a really emotional storyline, and then there's like a reunion story at the end, which is my favorite. There's actually 2 of those books today. I really like the writing, and I'm definitely going to buy this one because I think I would read it again, and I want to have it in my library because I gave it 5 stars and really enjoyed it. So I would definitely recommend, if you have not read The Fountains of Silence, go look it up on your library app, or go get a print copy and read that if you like any kind of historical fiction. And that one it's mostly clean. There's a little bit of light language and a little bit of kissing. There is a love story, but I would say it's definitely on the clean side. And the next I read Persuasion. I also gave this 5 stars. So I've talked about this specific copy quite a bit on my channel because I got it for my birthday, and then I talked about it in my What Am I Currently Reading video. So I read this because I got a new copy and I wanted to reread it, and a lot of people said that it was their favorite Jane Austen. So I thought I would pick it up again and see. I had given it 5 stars previously, and I almost gave it 4 stars, but then the ending is just so good. I have struggled with Jane Austen though. If you have any like resources on how to really understand Jane Austen and what she's doing, I'd really appreciate some maybe links in the comment below. But a lot of Jane Austen feels kind of hopeless and pointless to me because there's not much purpose in their life, and she doesn't really write from a Christian worldview. So that I really struggled with reading that. So I felt like half the book was kind of just pointless. They're just gossiping. But once you get to the end, and then it's like this really sweet reunion, and it was really interesting reading it because you see that even 200 years ago when this book was written, they still thought the same way and had the same emotions that we have today. Sometimes we think that 2022 is so different than any other time in history, but really humans are the same. So that's really fascinating to see her writing and how a lot of it can be like kind of dry and just normal, and then all of a sudden she writes this really emotional stuff and you're like, oh wow, people had emotions back then. But I really did enjoy reading that, and I think it is on my top 3 Jane Austen books. I don't know if I would put it above, definitely Emma's my favorite. I don't know where I would put Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion, but Persuasion is definitely a good one, and it's a short one if you want to start out. I would not recommend Sense and Sensibility because that is ultimate dumbness to me. And then another book I read, Josiahs Reformation by Richard Sibbes. This is one of the Puritan paperbacks. So this was the book of the month at our church was Puritan paperback. So I decided, okay, this is a great motivation to pick up another one. The other one that I've read is The Bruised Reed, also by Richard Sibbes. So I picked up this one, and it took me, I think, 2 months to read just because I was busy with school and everything, and I was reading little portions of it in the morning. But I really enjoyed it, and it's a collection of 4 sermons that Richard Sibbes preached, and then they were published in a book, and it's based off of 2 Chronicles 34:26-28, talking about Josiah, King Josiah, and how he had a humble and gentle heart towards God. So he kind of explains, what does that mean? How can we cultivate that? Talking about how we should humble ourselves, because if we don't, then God is going to have to forcefully humble us, and that is not going to be pleasant for anyone. And then the last chapter, he talks about the saints refreshing and going to heaven, and the end, how that is exciting for us and hopeful. But in the last 5 pages, I think, is where my problem with this book came in. So 120 pages of it, fabulous, totally recommend. And then the last 5 pages, he has a little bit of bad theology that starts popping up. He kind of equates the church with Israel, and so he says that because King Josiah was also head of the church, therefore the King of England should be head of the church, which I would not agree with that viewpoint, but it definitely does not affect the rest of the book, and I think the rest of the book had some really, really good points. It was very encouraging, it was very humbling to read, and some good things that I have in my mind to remember. There's so many great quotes in here. Yeah, talking about how God can humble us. It says, a man may be humbled and yet not humble. So we can go through things that make us feel humbled, but our heart is not actually humble. He talks about what is confession, and he talks about how to have that tender heart before God, how to have that love for God, how do we cultivate that, which I thought was really great to read in a book, because I kind of been wondering about that. How do you draw closer to God? And he was saying, bring your cold heart to the fire of Christ, which I thought was such a great quote. I would definitely recommend the Puritans just to read, have one of them. If that's the only thing that you're reading besides the Bible, read a Puritan paperback, because you'll learn so much from it, and it's actually really captivating to read, and you almost don't want to put it down, which you would think is kind of unusual. But I really liked Josiah's Reformation. And then the last book I read was The Paris Dressmaker by Christy Cambron. And this I gave 3 stars. So that was the lowest one of the month. A pretty good month last month with a bunch of 5-star books. But this one I only gave 3 stars. It had good potential. So it's historical fiction based in Paris during World War II. And what I thought was really interesting is almost every book or movie that mentions Paris, they're always in some type of revolution or something like that. And so all I can picture is just all these beautiful old buildings, but gunfire right in front of it, because that's how it always happens. But this one had good potential. It was about the I can't remember what it's called, but basically like the French spy network that they had during World War II whenever Paris was taken over by Nazis, but there were still people fighting for the right cause, and it was kind of about the women who were helping out with that. And I guess it's a true story that some of the dressmakers who worked for, I can't remember, one of the really famous, like, expensive dressmakers of the time, it's now like a perfume company, I can't remember what it's called, they would sew these dresses and so that they could smuggle microfilm out to the spies in England. So it was really interesting, but the author wrote it to where there's basically like 4 storylines going on at once. So you start out with character A in later on in the war, and then you flip back to character B early in the war, and then you do character A early in the war, and then you do character B late in the war. And it was really confusing, especially listening to it, to try to figure out who are we talking about here, where is the storyline like connecting, and the main characters never actually really meet, so that made it even more confusing. And this is supposedly Christian fiction. This wasn't recommended by any of y'all, but I saw it on a book group. Someone recommended it. Wouldn't really count it as Christian fiction, because if you mention like God twice, that doesn't really count as Christian fiction, because it's not like inspiring Christian. And there's one part where they say like our faith carried us through the war at the end of the war, but there was no mention of it throughout the war. So how does your faith carry you through if you didn't actually have faith during the war? It was not the greatest Christian fiction. And as usual, the love story that she put in there kind of just detracted from the story and was kind of improbable and weird in the middle of a war, instead of actually adding to the story and making it better. So I'd like to see Christian authors do better at writing fiction that is just from a Christian worldview. That's not necessarily sticking in weird little moments of, oh, I had faith, but like actual Christianity influencing them throughout the whole book. So not one that I would recommend at all. So I hope you enjoyed these 7 books that I read in April. May is already off to a pretty great start, and now that I am done with school until the fall, I have a lot more time to read, so I'm looking forward to reading more books. What was your favorite book that you read in the month of April? And maybe I can pick it up for this month and read it and do a review on it. I hope to see y'all next week, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and go and follow me over on Instagram so that you can keep up with all the videos and news that I post. And I will see you next week. Bye!